for members to availing themselves for today's meeting. I know Friday is usually, well, Friday is a working day, but people use that for traveling. But thank you very much. Now we're working at home, so there is no excuse of traveling and whatever. Today we are getting the second set of presentations, the Strike Plan and APP from Compensation Fund, Productivity SA and Nedlac. We will then request the committee section to take us through who is here. But can I upfront said today it's one of those days that are rare in our committee of not having the members of the executive, both the minister and the DM. The minister is attending a funeral, and then we have and I was also told that the deputy minister has got a bereavement. So it's just one of those days that, at least in this committee, we are proud to say that both they respect and they attend committees, but today is just one of those unfortunate days. And I hope it will be understood by the members of the portfolio committee. We then allow the acting committee secretary to take us through members that are here, and if there are any apologies from members, and then from there we'll hand over to the DG to take us through to the delegation that he is leading. Over to you, Poshe.
Good morning, Chairperson, honorable members, as well as colleagues. So far, we have the following members from the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labor. We have Chairperson Honorable Dundwa, Honorable Nkabane, Honorable Nontsele, Honorable Mdabe, Honorable Zuma. We also have Honorable Bagrame, Honorable Mkondo, and Honorable Denner. We received 2 apologies. Chairperson, Honorable Kado will join the meeting later at 10, and Mr. Yenana will not be able to attend today. And from the staff, we have myself, Poshe Ndabeni, the committee assistant, Sibongiseni Ngcobo, the content advisor, as well as Tebu Mukwena, the researcher. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ndabeni, but we would have loved to see your face, but it's fine. We will see your face the other time. DG?
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, my colleagues. Chair, we have the CEO of Productivity South Africa, Mr. Motiba. He is with Dr. Sibusiso Sabela, and we have Mr. Sam Murotoba, who's the DDG for Public Employment Services. We have Mr. Vyoma Fata, the Commissioner for Compensation Fund. We have the Executive Director of Nedlac, Ms. Lisa Seftel, and we have staff from the Ministry, Zandi Mweli, and we have the PLO Tando Wababa, and we have Ms. Karabo Bakhakhane and staff from my office chair, Ms. Matapelo Mataboche. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Can I check if we do have any, visitors, and if they are, those that are not from the department nor from portfolio committee, can they please tell us who they are? Who is Sham? I can't spell that. Is that person Shamsuddin? Is he from the department?
Good morning, Chairperson. Yes, Farhan Shamsuddin. I'm from the Nedlac, the CFO of the Nedlac.
Oh.
So I'll be supporting Ms. Lisa Seftel.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. And who else?
Good morning, Chairperson. My name is Mukhadi Matlachane. I am from Productivity SA, working in the office of Mr. Mutiba. Thank you, Chairperson.
No, those that are coming with entities is fine. And PMG, I don't know why PMG always mute itself and not want to be. No, okay, that's fine. Can we? All right, DG, as you are leading the team, our agenda for today is that we'll get the stack plan and APP from compensation fund, and is the first to make a presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll ask Compensation Fund Commissioner, Mr. Mafata, to run through the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Over to you, Mr. Mafata.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to Chair and to the honorable members. Can I be enabled to share the presentation?
We'll be assisting you to do that.
The host, thank you, Chair. It has been done.
It's not yet up. Oh.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, so we'll be presenting the strategic plan and summary, as well as the annual performance plan for the year 2021-2022, as well as the budget that is going to resource the. That will enable the implementation of the annual performance plan. Starting slides are just introductory slide, Chair, the known information about the fund, our mandate, which is derived from the Constitution in terms of Section 27, as well as Section 15 of the Compensation for Occupational Injuries and Diseases Act. And the strategic plan that we have, as well as the annual performance plan, is all aimed at achieving the vision that we have set for ourselves of being a world-class provider of sustainable compensation for occupational injuries, diseases, rehabilitation, and reintegration services, Chair. Looking at the strategic plan high level, so our strategic plan of the compensation fund supports three priorities of government: capable, ethical, and developmental state, economic transformation and job creation, as well as consolidating the social wage through reliable and basic services. So these are the three priorities of government that the strategic plan, as well as the annual performance plan of the compensation fund, support, with the impact statements that are outlined in the slide above, with all the activities that we do are aimed at making the impact that is outlined here. When we look at the link between, we have 6 strategic objectives or 6 strategic priorities in the compensation fund that are linked to the MTSF priorities that I spoke to earlier on. So our first one is improving systems of internal control and maintaining financial soundness. And the second one is developing capacity of the fund to deliver according to our mandate. These 2 strategic priorities are supporting the MTSF priority 1 of being of a capable, ethical, and developmental state. The second priority, which is economic transformation and job creation, is supported by 2 strategic priorities of the compensation fund. One, ensuring appropriate benefits are delivered to intended beneficiaries efficiently and at a reasonable cost. And then also to contribute to employment and economic growth through rehabilitation and reintegration services of the fund. The last priority of government, consolidating the social wage and through reliable and basic services, is supported by 3 strategic priorities from the fund. One, improving operational efficiency through process reengineering and technological innovation. And the second one being to ensure appropriate benefits are delivered to intended beneficiaries efficiently and at reasonable cost. The last strategic priority that supports MTSF priority is the contributing to employment and economic growth through rehabilitation and reintegration services. So these are the 6 strategic priorities then of the compensation fund and the outcome indicators that we are tracking with regard to the implementation of our strategic plan and our APP. First one, looking at improving the systems of internal control and maintaining financial soundness. The outcome indicators that we are tracking is 1, improving the assessments of return of earnings by employers, increasing the assets of the fund to make sure that we're then able to fund all the activities of fund as well as the improvements in benefits that we're implementing over the next coming years. Also, the improved audit outcomes. We know that the audit outcomes in the fund have not been so positive, and there is a focused effort to make sure that we turn this situation around. The also looking at wasteful and fruitless expenditure, eliminating that as well as the irregular expenditure. And lastly, also looking at the resolution of reported incidents of fraud, because we know also the environment is prone to a lot of unethical conduct, both by internal and external parties. And so we're looking also at making sure that we resolve these as soon as possible. Second one is ensuring appropriate benefits are delivered to intended beneficiaries efficiently and at a reasonable cost. The outcomes that we are looking at there is improving the finalization of compensation benefits that we pay to our claimants, looking at rehabilitation and reintegration of injured workers back into employment. Though the amendments in the law are still in progress, we have already started about 3 or 4 years ago with the rehabilitation and reintegration programs in the fund. And then also looking at the monitoring of performance by the mutuals who have been licensed to assist the fund in carrying out its mandate in the specific sectors. Thirdly, the contribution to employment creation and economic growth through rehabilitation and reintegration programs. First one is contributing to the transformation of the financial sector through the assets managed by asset managers, and also the number of jobs that are created through the presidential youth employment interventions. And lastly, to look at also the number of decent jobs that could be created through the Job Summit initiatives. And we use so to achieve these 3 outcomes, we are then looking at the muscle of assets that we want to grow so that they can be able to contribute. The fourth one is improving the operational efficiencies through process reengineering and technological innovation. Here, the outcome that we are tracking is the integrated claims management system that we are in the process of implementing. The 5th strategic priority is the developing the capacity of the fund to deliver according to its mandate. And here, the outcome that we're looking at is improving the human resource capacity of the compensation fund, both from a skill point of view as well as the numbers. And the last one is embedding an ethical culture and zero tolerance to fraud and corruption. The outcomes that we are tracking is improved ethical culture within the fund, as well as the resolution of reported incidents of fraud and corruption. When we look at there are specific targets that we are tracking over a 5-year period, so that are supporting this indicator. So this slide then just shows all those where we want to end up at the end of the 5-year period of implementing the strategic plan. If you look at the first indicator, we're looking at 95% of employers being assessed, a 10% increase in the assets of the fund, an unqualified audit opinion, 100% elimination of wasteful and fruitless expenditure, and 75% reduction of irregular expenditure by that period. And also the percentage of the all reported incidents of fraud and corruption investigated and resolved. With regard to appropriate benefits that are delivered to beneficiaries, we tracking that by end of the strategic plan period, 95% of all claims would be adjudicated within a reasonable period of time. 100% of benefits paid within 5 days of them being approved. And also 95% of medical benefits being finalized within a reasonable period of time. 90% of severely injured workers enrolled into rehabilitation programs, as well as service agreements signed with mutuals and fully implemented to make sure that the mandate continues to be carried out across all sectors. The contributing to employment and economic growth, 20% of assets of the fund asset. We know that there is by law PIC mandated to manage the assets of the fund, but to contribute towards transformation in the financial services sector, we're then looking at 20% of our total assets managed through the Black Asset Managers via the PIC, and number of jobs that would have been created through the our contribution to those numbers would then be about 300,000, and also 7,000 number of decent jobs that would have been created through our investments. Improving the operational efficiencies through process reengineering and technology and innovation here would then be supporting the implementation of the integrated claims management system. We know we started with the claims portion of the system a year ago. We are now starting with the premium side to make sure that we have a fully integrated system by end of 2024. Developing the capacity of the fund, we need to make sure that we have maintained a low vacancy rate at any given point. So by 2024-25, we're looking then at 8%. And also we have a visibility and accessibility program of improving access to the services of the compensation fund, as well as visibility of the fund with regards to education programs for workers, knowing that what they're entitled to. So we have a strategy, and there's a 5-year period within which we're implementing the strategy. So we're saying by end of the 5th year, 100% of the programs need to have been implemented. Looking at the ethical culture and zero tolerance, 80% of all incidents finalized within that financial year that they are reported in, as well as making sure that the ethics committees are in place, operational, to make sure that we also proactively deal with issues of fraud and corruption, and we're not only reactive in the form of investigating incidents, but making sure that we can prevent those incidents from happening in the first place. Now, to implement the strategic plan, we are now in the 2nd year of the strategic plan, and this annual performance plan then is the set of activities that is planned for this 2021-2022 financial year to support the objectives that we've set in the strategic plan. When we look at it, the fund is divided into 4 programs. When we look at the indicators that we've set for ourselves for the 2021-2022 under program 1, the first one is allocating of funds to small and medium enterprises. We know that the SMME sector is instrumental in creating jobs and contributing to employment creation. So we are now intentional with what we want to allocate towards funding for small businesses, so that they can then also contribute to employment creation. In the 2021-2022 financial year, we're then allocating about 200 million towards funding small businesses, and this figure is going to grow to, I think by the end of the strategic planning period, is almost 1 billion rands that we would have allocated to SMMEs. The number of jobs created through the Job Summit initiatives and the investment activities of the fund. So in the 2021-2022, all new investments that would be taking place in the 2021-2022, we are targeting to have at least 1,000 jobs, new jobs created through these investments. Looking at the assets of the fund, increasing about 10%. That's the target, to increase by 10% in the current year, and also reducing with regard to dealing with the audit outcomes. The target for the 2020-2021 is to, for 2021-2022, sorry, it's about 75% of all matters that affect the audit opinion, because these are the issues that are then the causes of disclaimers. We want to have these resolved. Wasteful and fruitless expenditure, reduced 50% of the balance, reduced by end of the financial year, and then irregular expenditure about 25% of the balance. The percentage of implementation of the improved visibility and accessibility strategy, as I indicated, this is our strategy of improving access to services of the compensation fund. So the target of the activities that we've identified in the plan, 40% of these need to have been implemented by the end of the 2021-2022 financial year. Cases of fraud, so the target is 65% of all cases that are reported then would then be finalized and investigated within the year that they were reported. Implementing the ethics management program. This is our proactive program of preventing fraud and unethical conduct. So in the 2021-2022, the target we've set is to conduct a detailed ethics risk assessment across all stakeholders. as well as coming up with a plan of how we then address any of the risks that would have been identified through that assessment in the 2021-2022. Looking at the reduction in the vacancy rate, target is then 9.9% of vacancies. We know that we're not likely to keep a 0% vacancy because of movements. We also, when we promote within, so we create vacancies also in some of the areas, but we want to manage and make sure that this doesn't exceed 10%. The number of quarterly and annual reports monitored for mutuals who are then supporting the funding delivering of the mandate. So we're then also tracking the reports that the board uses also to look at, to monitor and evaluate the impact that the mutuals make in the delivering of the COID mandate. This just then summarizes the Program 1 indicators. You have went through all of them. I can move to Program 2, which is COID services. This is the first of our 3 core business units that is responsible for registration of employers, registration of claims, assessment of employers, as well as adjudication of claims. The first target we have here is the percentage of received return of earnings that needs to be assessed on an annual basis. The target that we've set for 2021-2022 is that 85% of all employers who've submitted ROEs are assessed within the financial year. Second one is also the percentage of claims that are received are adjudicated within 30 working days. The target for 2021-22 is 85% of claims adjudicated within 30 days. In the last financial year, the year that just ended, this target was sitting at about within 40 working days. So we are progressively reducing this. By the end of the strategic planning period, this would have reduced to almost claims being adjudicated within 5 working days of receipt. The percentage of approved benefits paid within 5 working days. Once a claim has been adjudicated, liability accepted, and all documentation submitted and the claim has been finalized, we then authorize it for payment. So the target is to make sure that these are, in 2021, 2022, 90% of the claims are paid within 5 working days. And this is the standard that we maintain. This brings in an allowance also for days where we may have either a system downtime, or you may have some claims not being payable, either owing to unavailability of either banking details or whatever the case may be. So we then set a target of about 90% minimum should be paid within 5 working days. This slide then summarizes the Program 2 indicators. Program 3 is the second of our core business units. It also focuses then on medical services as well as medical claims payments. So the first indicator that we're tracking is the percentage of requests for pre-authorizations where workers require either specialized medical treatment or the claim needs to be reopened because they need to undergo a medical procedure. So the target we've set is that once we receive such a request from the treating physician or the treating practitioner, we then need to finalize this approval within 10 working days of receipt, 90 days and 90%, and we hoping to improve this over the period to almost 95%. The second indicator here is the percentage of accepted medical invoices that are finalized within 40 working days of receipt. And the target here is 80% for 2021-2022 within 40 working days. The target for the year that just ended was at 60 days. We've now reduced this progressively to 40 days, and we, over the life of the strategic plan, by the end of it, we would have reduced this to about 90% of invoices paid within 15 working days. This slide then just summarizes the indicators for the medical benefits. The last program that we have, which is one of our core business, is the rehabilitation and orthotic services. I did indicate that we started already implementing rehabilitation and services already about 4 years ago. So now here the percentage of requests for assistive devices finalized within 15 working days. The target is to have 85% of these finalized within 15 working days. This is where both the pensioners of the compensation fund and those that have recently been disabled, where they then require assistive devices to be issued to them. So the standard is within 15 working days, this should be finalized, and the worker or the injured worker should then be sitting with his or her device. We also then, part of the rehabilitation is we're also looking at social rehabilitation and vocational rehabilitation. Now, social rehabilitation, we're looking at all the psychosocial aspects of supporting an injured worker. And part of this support then also entails either where they intend to reskill themselves to go back into the labor market, they can then be assisted. And also from a social support point of view, where they cannot be able to then afford to pay for the higher learning costs for their beneficiaries, we then also step in as part of our psychosocial support to fund such training. So the targets that we set here is the number of learners funded annually for post-school education and training institutions. Sitting the target for 2021-2022 is about 1,145. We have been running this program now for the last 3 years, and we've seen that the numbers are steadily growing, though not at the rate that we want, but a lot of our pensioners are taking the advantage of this, both them and their beneficiaries. Persons with disabilities then are funded to promote access to education and prospects of employment. We also then target both the those that would have been disabled as a result of occupational injuries and diseases, as well as some portion of those that would generally be disabled not as a result of occupational injuries and diseases. We do then offer some bursary programs for them. So the target for 2021-2022 is about 200. This then summarizes the indicators for the rehabilitation and orthotic services. When we look at then the resourcing of the annual performance plan in terms of the budget for the 2021-2022 year, as well as over the 2023-2024 MTF period. On our revenue side, we've budgeted for what, 19 billion rand in revenue, which is largely made up of revenue from the assessments of employers, which is the biggest contributor at 9 billion, as well as the interest earned on the investments that we have through the PIC, and some of the accounting budget for fair value adjustments, as well as the actuarial gains and losses. Those are the 4 that make up the big number that contributes to the 19 billion, and this number is anticipated over the MTF period to grow to about 22 billion. On the expenditure side, we've budgeted about 13.8 billion, which with the biggest contributor of it being the benefits, which is budgeted at about 6 billion. And then we also then have those accounting entries that we budget for. The finance costs for the unwinding of the discounts on our liabilities, as well as the provisions for outstanding claims, as well as the capitalized pension values, as well as the impairment losses for movement or fluctuations in our investments. And then we also then have goods and services, which then pays for the administration of the compensation fund, sitting at 1 billion rands, as well as the compensation of employees. The numbers here would look much higher than they have looked in the past, because the compensation fund is now funding the occupational health and safety inspections fully. We know that the department increased the number of occupational health and safety inspectors last year to with the additional 500. So that has also contributed to a significant increase in the administration budget of the compensation fund. But this is an important investment that we've made, because it would help prevent occupational injuries and diseases in the workplace, and that's the whole rationale for partnering with the occupational health and safety inspections. We also then track the efficiencies in terms of how we spend the money with these 4 ratios. One, the employee costs to total revenue. In terms of the current budget that we have for 2021-2022, the employee cost as a total of revenue is about 5%. When we look at the employee cost as a total of the total expenditure, it's also sitting at around 7%. The target here is to have no more than 10% for either of these 2 ratios. Then we also have the benefits to the contributions ratio. The benefits that we pay is make up about 31% of the total contributions that we collect. And on the admin side, the admin costs as a percentage of revenue is also sitting at 5% for 2021-2022. The target also is to maintain this below 10%. That's the end of my presentation, Chair. Maybe just in conclusion, Chair, apologies. So the budget that we have, the two things that we have not factored into the budget is the effects of the COID Amendment Bill, especially in the outer years of the MTF period, 2022-2023. We know that there is a lot of improvements in the benefits that is going to come about as a result of the COID Amendment Bill. So that is also going to increase the costs of benefits, including the rehabilitation, which is going to be carried out at a much larger scale that we are doing now. So this has not been factored in, but we will then factor it in when we do the adjustment budgets, depending on where the COID Amendment Bill process is at the end of the financial year. Then also we know that we've implemented a new employer classification model with effect from the 1st of April, which results in some employers either having reduced assessment rates and others some increased assessment rate, but the overall impact is the net reduction in the revenue that we may collect in the first year of implementation. However, over the 5-year period of implementation, it's going to neutralize. But so that impact is also was not in the budget at the time when we had the budget approved. We had just concluded our processes at Nedlac with the social partners, so it had not been published yet. The investment income and fair value adjustments also then assume that would be a positive economic growth, and so any change to this forecast would then result in much less investment revenue, as well as the fair value adjustments being at a loss. That's the end of my presentation, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mafate. I have just received, the DG has just requested to be excused. He had some unwelcomed visitors in his house, and now he's attending to that with the police. So he will join us when he's done. Can we have the next presentation from the Productivity SA? I'm not quite sure your hand is up, Honorable Bagram.
Thank you. I'll put it up. I thought you were going to take questions, but I'm happy to go through all the presentations first, whatever you've made a decision on. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Productivity SA.
Thank you, Chairperson.
You may continue, sir.
I'm trying to load the presentation. Can I verify if the presentation is on the screen? Thank you very much.
From my side, I don't know with other members.
It is available to.
Are we?
Yeah, we can see it, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
We are presenting the strategic plan as well as the annual performance plan of Productivity SA. Just to start off on this slide 3 up to slide 7, it's more issues relating to the mandate of the entity as well as other legislative mandates. But on this slide, I just want to emphasize the issues that we are talking to in relation to addressing productivity holistically. Chair, you would recall that in our various interactions, there's always this issue about locating Productivity SA in the economic as well as labor market landscape. and the fact that we don't have a voice. And over this medium-term strategic framework, we have taken a resolve that says, let's focus our energy on addressing productivity holistically, to the extent that there are 3 levels at which we'll be looking at that. First is at a country level, which also has implications for policy. At an industry level, if you note that the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition is now focusing on sector master plans. So our interventions are also looking into that space. And then we will continue intervening at enterprise level, where we are in a position to support enterprises, both those that are doing well, but to improve their competitiveness, and also those that are going through distress, in order to intervene and support them so that we save jobs. So this is very critical for us as we move towards 2024, also in support of the National Development Plan. I will then skip all the slides, Chair, and request members to go to slide number 10. To the extent that the issues that I raised about supporting productivity holistically, you would realize that our functions are structured in that manner. And to the extent that we are now saying the focus is on enterprise development and support programs, and we have identified 3 programs as part of our reconfiguration of the entity. The first is competitiveness improvement services. The second is business turnaround and recovery. And the third is research, innovation, and statistics. So these 3 programs are externally focused. That is where we're saying supporting the economy and the labor market. You will find that everything that we do will flow from these 3 programs. If we go to slide number 17, on this slide, Chair, we are giving an indication that in our developing the strategic plan as well as the annual performance plan, we're always guided by the government programs, to the extent that the documents that we're presenting before you today are aligned to SONA 2021, and we have extensively looked at the economic reconstruction and recovery plan to identify those issues that are specific to productivity SA's mandate. And 2 key things are identified. The first one is industrialization of the economy and a massive increase in local production. So a lot of our energy will be focusing on that, as well as an employment stimulus to create jobs and support livelihoods. And as I indicated, 2 key programs of Productivity SA, which is the Competitiveness Improvement Services Program, as well as the Business Turnaround and Recovery Program, are structured in such a way that we will be able to support those 2 priorities of government. From slide 19, we're giving an indication of the 2 priorities over the medium-term strategic framework that we're focusing on. It's priority 1, which is about a capable, ethical, and developmental state. And priority number 2, economic transformation and job creation. So in the strategic plan, starting from the next slides will be indicating what is it that we're doing in terms of priority number 1 and what we're doing in terms of priority number 2. In terms of our impact statement, we are focused on promoting full and productive employment and decent work for all. And this is motivated mostly if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, in particular, goal number 8. That has to do with the work that we do. And I want to emphasize that the issue of productive employment and decent work, it's actually gaining prominence. If you look at the ILO Centenary Declaration, it's specific on this. And also from the perspective of also, as I indicated, Sustainable Development Goal 8, this is very critical. And I think there will be a lot of work that will be taking place in partnership with also the International Labour Organization that we will be working on in the coming year. In terms of our priority 1, capable, ethical, and developmental state, the outcome there, it's focusing on functional, efficient, and integrated government. And we set ourselves an outcome indicator that reflects to percentage of SMMEs paid within 30 days of receipt of statement. We're very emphatic on this because there is an outcry there in the small enterprise space that if we don't pay them on time, we contribute to their demise. Worse off that for us who are working with small enterprises to improve their productivity and competitiveness, we cannot be contributing to their failure. So that is why we're elevating this indicator. And the second one is around governance and regulatory compliance, so that we ensure that we reduce fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And Chair and honorable members should realize that we have given the 5-year targets in that regard, as well as the implementing program. On the second priority, the outcome there is support the creation of jobs through job summit commitments and the economic reconstruction and recovery plan, in particular the mass employment stimulus. So you can see that flowing from the job summit in 2018, we pulled out key issues that are specific to the work that we do, so that they reflect in the strategic plan, and also that we have taken a very big interest in terms of the economic reconstruction and recovery plan. And that is why in this area, we have identified 2 outcome indicators. The first one being the number of jobs created and retained through job summit initiatives. And in that area, over a 5-year term, we are looking at over 40,000 jobs saved, 806 companies facing economic distress supported, establishing at least and training members of workplace or future forums, 2,400 of those, and then also ensuring that over this period of time, we're able to support SMMEs, over 8,000 of them. And then one new indicator that we have in this area, it's around entrepreneurs, workers, and managers capacitated to promote the culture of productivity. And we're looking at over 7,800 over the medium term. I'm raising this, Chair, because the challenges quite often we have in the labor market and the economy, in particular when we talk about productivity issues, is that quite often there is this perception that productivity is about job destruction. And so we have taken this conscious decision that our intervention should be collaborative. When we enter the workplace, it should be in collaboration with management as well as workers, in order that productivity issues become a thank you, so that productivity issues become a workplace issue as well as a national issue. And then the last one in this regard, it's a focus on productivity champions. We have taken this decision with the understanding that we don't have sufficient resources as an entity to cover the whole country. So the idea behind this is that if we borrowed from the community workers program in this regard, community development workers in this regard. So we want to populate the country with productivity champions. We believe that once we have those, particularly in the districts, they would assist us because they will be just closer to the enterprises that we have supported. So they will assist us in monitoring as well as additional interventions where required. Furthermore, in terms of economic transformation, we are looking at issues of advocacy and public awareness programs to ensure that productivity is embraced countrywide. The baseline there has always been 10 in the sense that 9, it's in line with the regional, or what we call provincial productivity awards and regional milestones. And the 10th is the national productivity awards that we hold annually. So over the next 5 years, we're targeting 50 of these interventions. This is about ensuring that productivity is embraced countrywide, and also that there's accountability for productivity. These are issues that are reflective of how do we collectively as government, business, and labor contribute to the competitiveness ranking of South Africa improving. So a lot of work is being done in this space. In terms of the annual performance plan, Chairperson and honorable members, as per program 1, we are looking at 3 output indicators. The first one being percentage of SMMEs paid within 30 days of receipt. And our target there, it's 100%. The second indicator is percentage reduction on fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And we're looking here at a 10% reduction from the baseline of over 500,000 Rand. And the third output indicator is percentage of planned training interventions commenced. The focus here is, if you look at the impact of COVID-19, particularly on small enterprises that we're targeting, was that business models of enterprises are changing. They are moving to digitalization and of operations and so on. Now, if we don't capacitate, particularly our productivity practitioners, you would find that we are not able to respond adequately to the demand for our services. So We'll be embarking on a lot of training of our productivity practitioners so that they are up to scratch in terms of the new developments. If you look at program 2, we're looking at, in terms of the indicator, the number of SMMEs and other enterprises supported through competitiveness improvement services. And our annual target there, it's 1,252. I must upfront indicate this is a drop in the ocean, Chairperson. If you imagine that in this country, we have over 1.7 million small enterprises in the informal economy, and those are the ones that require more of our services. But we believe that this intervention of 1,200 is targeted at those in the productive sectors of the economy. And this is where we're talking about intervening in support of the sector master plans. And that's where we believe that will have maximum intervention and outcomes. And then the second one is number of entrepreneurs, workers, and managers capacitated. We are targeting here over 2,000 for this financial year. In terms of program 3, where we're talking about supporting enterprises that are going through distress, here we're looking in terms of indicator, number of jobs saved in companies facing economic distress. And we're looking at least over 9,000 jobs. Again, I must indicate, because of the large challenges that we have, we are also targeting specific areas with a multiplier effect. As we say, the focus of our interventions are in the productive sectors. The second indicator in this regard, it's number of companies facing economic distress supported through the turnaround strategies to retain jobs. We're looking at 191 companies. And the last indicator in this regard is the number of workplace or future forum members trained and capacitated on productivity improvement solutions. The idea here is to ensure that once we have intervened and we've capacitated both management as well as workers, they would at least be able to sustain the momentum. One, they'll be able to identify areas of weaknesses. Even if we're not there, they can on their own be able to intervene. What we have experienced in the 2020-21 financial year in partnership with the clothing and textile sector is that our interventions in that area has assisted that sector to improve in terms of their operations. And we're beginning to see positive outcomes in that area. We're now going to be doing a lot more in this, and we have sourced also the partnership of the ILO in terms of their SCORE program, so that as we intervene in this sector, we're able to get maximum returns. On program 4, that is our research, innovation, and statistics. We're looking at continuously providing research reports and publications on priority sectors on an annual basis, as well as continuously producing productivity reports. Productivity statistics reports. In this instance, it also includes our contribution to the Institute of Management Development Competitiveness Index, which would we have already finalized the first phase of inputs, and the report would come out in June. This would help us as a country to develop a baseline where we are able to say this is where we are in this financial year collectively, how can we, with other strategic partners, improve on the work that we do. In terms of the culture of productivity, we're looking at, as I indicated, the number of productivity awards and regional milestones, milestone workshops hosted. We're looking at 10 during this financial year, and also the number of productivity champions capacitated. We're looking at a target of 323. At this point, Chairperson, with your permission, I would request that our CFO, Dr. Sabela, take the committee through this slide.
Thank you, Dr. Sabela. Over to you.
Honorable Chair and honorable members, the DG and the colleagues, good morning. If the host can move your presentation through the budget slide.
Sorry, Doctor. Is it possible for you, for us to see your face? Turn on your video. Hoping that is not going to interfere with, oh, okay.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable members, I'll take you through the budget of Productivity SA in the MTSF. I think what is more important or key to highlight on this slide, number one, is the fact that you receive funding from multi-sources, one from the Department of Employment and Labor, instead of our administration program. We also receive funding from the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, instead of our WPC program. We receive funding from Unemployment Insurance Fund, instead of our BTNR, which is the Business Turnaround and Recovery. And then we also do work with the debt. Now, I guess what is important to note on the numbers, and basically what concerns the entity is the movement year on year. If you look at the money that is appropriated by Parliament to the entity, it shifts from 59 to 61, 61 to 62 in the next 3 years. Now, when one looks carefully in the percentage movement year on year, you'll pick up that the movement is indeed below inflation. It then puts pressure or responsibility back to the entity to say, indeed, the fiscal is under distress, and at the entity, we have the responsibility to do more, to go out there and generate revenue for ourselves to ensure that we sustain the entity. So over and above what we get as government grants, we do consulting work. If you look at the line under exchange revenue income from other consulting, we are planning to generate about 15 million of our own over and above what we get as grants. In the following year, we planning to generate about 16 million, and that goes to 16.8. If I can just highlight some of the challenges of that is we're planning these values obviously operating under capacity, because at this stage we are operating at about 70% capacity. Nonetheless, we will do our best that we achieve these values to sustain the entity. And I will Chair, if I can just move swiftly on the total expenditure. If you look, I think what is key to highlight on this line is the compensation of employees. We as the entity have taken a very tough decision, and obviously we are hoping that things may change in the future, but to be conservative, we have decided to keep our compensation for employees number flat. If you look at the next 3 years, it's not moving, it's lying flat. Understanding obviously what we get as appropriation, but it is also moving at about 2-3%. It's not enough. And obviously what we are generating over and above just to supplement what we get from as a grant may not be achieved given again the COVID impacts that we experienced just in the past financial year. So we thought to be conservative, maybe let's just keep those numbers in terms of compensation flat. And obviously we hope for the best, and we will work hard to make sure that wherever there are opportunities and we can generate more, we will revise the position, but at this stage we've left the number flat. So basically my responsibility to ensure that the operations achieve their operational objectives within the confines of the prescript. FMA is very clear that what we do as an entity has to be done within budget. So basically these are the numbers. So all the targets that the CFO has reflected on will be achieved to the extent of the budget that we have. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Sabela. If then that is the end of the presentation from Productivity SA, can we then get the last presentation, which will be from Nedlac?
Thanks, Chairperson. If I can just share my screen. Chairperson, I hope you can the sharing. Okay. Thank you and good morning to my colleagues and to the honourable members. This is a presentation on our revised strategic plan as well as our annual performance plan. So we agreed in Nedlac with due regard to the fact that last year there were a number of very significant changes that we needed to revise our strategic plan as is provided for in the guidelines from the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. And that's really because the role of Nedlac has shifted. We've been doing work on the Presidential Job Summit, on the response to COVID, and in respect of the development and implementation of an economic recovery plan. Similarly, or related, this has meant that the requirements of Nedlac staff and capacity are different, and also that there needs to be increasing capacity to be able to deliver on what we regard as the Nedlac mandate. So we developed a theory of change. I won't go through it in a lot of detail, but obviously our impact remains the same, that social partners contribute meaningfully to processes to address economic growth and social equity. We've identified 3 important outcomes: that Nedlac is effective and accountable, that leaders of the business community, government and labor are able to collaborate to address relevant and important socioeconomic issues, and that the capability of our social partners is enhanced. And out of that, we developed intermediate outcomes for each of the programs. I won't go through them here because I returned to them just now. So essentially, the changes are a new way of characterizing the work of Nedlac. Secondly, enhancing the secretariat function. And thirdly, reconceptualizing and enhancing the capacity building of constituencies. So in terms of our revised strategic plan, I won't go through these in a lot of detail because they're also in our APP, but just to mention that we've introduced an annual digital survey of social partners, and we are going to be measured on the feedback that we get from them. So for Nedlac to be efficient, we want over 75% positive feedback. For governance to be effective, that really relates to our MANCO and our EXCO and so on, 75% positive feedback, and then that we deliver all our reports. In terms of our program 2, which is really the heart of the organization, we want to be measured on 3 areas. Firstly, that we convene successful dialogues, webinars, and so on. Secondly, that we reach successful agreements, such as the Eskom Social Compact. And thirdly, that processes are successfully concluded, such as the reports that go to Parliament in respect of legislation that is negotiated or consulted upon in Nedlac. And then also the process relating to socioeconomic disputes. Then in terms of capacity building, we've got a strong focus on this. And again, we are looking at 3 different indicators. One, that the constituencies have tools of the trade, and you can appreciate that in this time, having access to data, having access to devices is very important. that they have technical assistance to engage effectively, and that there is training, including, for example, the annual COSATU or Organized Labor School. In terms of risks, I have listed the risks and the mitigation that's included in our strategic plan. I'm sure you can all appreciate that we're working in an environment of growing complexity. There is the ongoing issue, which is very pertinent, around broader representation. And we are beginning to make progress there. We do have a report, which is going to the governor's task team next week. And then there is the uncertainty and factors outside the control of Nedlac. But I think over the last year, Nedlac has really been able to be agile and have flexible planning so that we can respond to these new situations, and then the issue of capacity. If I then move on to the annual performance plan, we have tried to respond proactively to the shifts in the strategic plan with due regard to ongoing fluidity. I think we've seen that the nature of the COVID pandemic changes, and when we think it's gone down, the next minute we know that we are back in a very precarious situation, as well as the ongoing impacts on the economy and the labor market. The fact that when we started, there was significant relief, and now we're in a much more constrained fiscal environment. The role that Nedlac will play in relationship to economic recovery, I would say that this is work in progress, although I think we're getting a good balance now about what is required and what the social partners would like to see as the role of Nedlac, and then the outcomes of the governance task team. So we've also added a lot of new indicators, which will need to be tested in this financial year. And I'm sure that the portfolio committee will be very useful in giving us feedback in this regard. So in terms of program 1, which is the administration, many of our indicators are similar to those of other entities about receiving an unqualified audit, making sure that our facilities are well managed, that our procurement processes are completed, and this has been a problem in the past, that staff are developed, that our governance is effective, and that we do appropriate monitoring and evaluation. In terms of the operations, we want to make sure that when we hold a dialogue, that the report is released within 14 days, so it's still current. Again, if we want to negotiate an agreement, or the social partners want to negotiate agreement, this can't drag on because it loses its effectiveness. So we want it concluded within 6 months. And then in terms of processes like reports for Nedlac, for acts that come to Parliament, again, we'd like it in 6 months. Personally, I think we should do it in 3. And then when we do standing committee reports, again, it's very important that there is speedy feedback to the applicants if they want to engage on socioeconomic protests. If we go to the issue of capacity building, now with capacity building, the initiative really rests with the social partners, particularly community and labor, that they provide us with a plan, and that Nedlac then needs to deliver according to that plan. So we want to make sure that in terms of tools, in terms of all of them, that we are able to provide 80% of the requests as agreed. And where we don't provide it, it's more, we hope, due to circumstances outside our control, that if you go on a procurement process and it is unresponsive. And then if I come to the risks in the APP, these are more operational risks. Nedlac has had a history of poor financial management, but as you heard earlier on, we have a new CFO, Farhan Samsudin, and we are working really hard on improving our internal controls and putting in place risk management, fraud prevention plans, and so on. And we are also finalizing a code of ethics, both for the Nedlac staff and for the social partners. On staff capacity, there's also work that we're doing around training and development, very important on IT and building facilities, both in terms of being able to be more proactive at a digital level, as well as occupational health and safety for COVID. We have budgeted and have got plans in place. And this is a little bit outside of our control around remote working. I think it does at some level make us go quicker, but at other levels, particularly in respect of mandating, sometimes those processes are slower. Then if we go to the budget, I'm going to ask the CFO to take us through the revenue and expenditure figures. Farhan?
Thank you, Edie. If you can just continue to move the slides as I move along. Yeah, you can go to the, yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning, members, once again. Yeah, this is a summary budget that we've prepared for the MTEF period for the 3 years, and starting off with 2021-22 in terms of our allocation, which is where majority of our funding comes from. It's at 59 million, and you'll see over the two outer years as well, it's roughly about 58.8 million and 59 million. So it's fairly consistent with no significant increase over the three-year period. And then there's another income line item as well, which is close just under 1 million rand for each of the 3 years, which takes us to 59.9 million, 59.7 and 60 million over the 3-year period. So roughly over the 3 years, you're looking at an average of 60 million, just under 60 million total revenue. Edie, we can move to the next slide. In terms of our expenditure as well, we've summarized the budgeted line items. The first one is the compensation of employees, which in 21-22 is for 28.4 million, which is broken down between the salaries and wages as well as benefits, which is the social contributions. And then the goods and services makes up about 31.5 million, taking us back to the 59.9 million. For the 21-22 financial year. I think just in terms of expenditure, a large portion of our expenditure obviously does go to our compensation of employees. I think in terms of the work that we do, a lot of the work that we do is facilitating, coordinating the various structural meetings that takes place at Nedlac. So a lot of our resources do go there, and of course then to the goods and services. And I think over the 3-year period, generally, our expenditure has been budgeted fairly consistently over the 3-year period. Edie, we can move to the next slide. The slide talks to the key budget shifts and the impact of budget cuts. Unfortunately, we were affected by budget cuts over the past financial year, which has been summarized on the left-hand side on the table. I think what's important though is, even though we've received these budget cuts, in terms of our outcomes and outputs, they were not decreased in terms of our APP, in terms of our strategic plan. So we are able to still continue. We do believe that within the current budget that we do have, with the budget cuts, we will still be able to achieve our mandate, because we've sort of shifted the way we plan to spend our budget. If you look towards the right, the budget shifts. It talks to the fact that there is an increased demand for facilitation, research, and negotiation skills, and therefore we've prioritized our resources to financial resources, to human resources, capacity building, as well as enabling our IT systems to assist us with working remotely and online meetings. And we've also decreased and deprioritized spending on physical meetings, because I think a lot of our spending would have gone to subsistence and travel and arranging for the various meetings that would take place on a daily basis. So with the move to virtual, we've been able to move some of that funds to assist us and enable us to be ready for COVID in a remote sort of working environment, even if it is potentially virtual as well. It could be a hybrid approach going forward, of course, but I think we are ready for what might come in future. Yeah, Edie, I think that is it in terms of the budget. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chairperson. That's the end of our presentation.
Sorry for that. We received the 3 presentations. We will then, I'll then request members, obviously, the sequence is that we started with productivity, with compensation fund, productivity, and then Nedlac. So when we ask questions, we will then try and follow that. I see we've got 3 hands, Honorable Ndabe, Honorable Kado, Honorable Begram, and Honorable Mkondo, in that order. Can I then, Honorable Ndabe? I think we have a problem.
Good morning to you and the honorable members. Staff from the entities. Yes, Chairperson, am I audible?
Now you are audible. Initially, you were not.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. My first question is related to the compensation fund. Firstly, Chair, is that in their annual performance plan, there is no indication that